So hello everybody again. Just please continue eating, but allow us to start. I'm very pleased to have the honor to also chair the last session of this very, very inspiring 2 days event. And I may introduce 3 distinguished speakers to you, one of them being here but not at the podium yet. I hope that he will make it. So we have Clint Phillips here, who is Chief Executive Officer and founder of Medici and 2nd.MD. We have Julian Ranger here, who is the Executive Chairman and founder of Digi.me. And we have Doc Searls, who is supposed to sit here, and who is among us, who is a journalist, author of The Intention Economy, and co-author, as you certainly know, of the Cluetrain Manifesto. Here he is. Great. Good to see you, Doc. There's no specific rule applicable when it comes to when and in how far you are allowed to intervene. I would appreciate very much any kind of intervention from your side. Whenever you have the feeling that you would like to add something to the discussion, please feel free, more than free to do so. Clint, would you start? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am Clinton Phillips. I am the least academic of everybody here, but I serve as diversity, not because I'm black or African, more so because that's a joke, obviously. But I am from South Africa, and I'm very honored, and thank you to Dr. Deb for inviting me to just talk you through a little bit of a story. And there we go. My journey started, I moved to Aspen, Colorado to play rugby.
Hey, good man.
It's a very different start to America. But I ran into some very interesting learnings around health data, around privacy, around security along the way. One of my first jobs was working in a chiropractor's office. With a healthcare background, I learned to be able to march patients through the process, and one of the things they were very big on was taking x-rays. But one of the things that the doctor told me is when people call and ask for their x-rays, you tell them that they do not have the right to take their x-rays. And that seemed very surprising because the people had paid for this x-ray. Why couldn't they take that x-ray you had showed them? And this was a surprise that he said this belongs to the clinic. It was also interesting that the chiropractor, like many, would use your data, your x-ray, to really scare you. And they would draw lines all over your x-ray and tell you that unless you came in 3 times a week for the rest of your life, you were going to have terrible problems with your neck. So not the greatest thing. I ended up starting a clinic here at the St. Regis Hotel in Aspen called Aspen Back and Body, and we help people avoid back surgery. 1,900 back surgeries were avoided thanks to people coming through our clinic. But the next step of learning came by when we saw that surgeons had really made the doctors, the chiropractors, look like amateurs because they ordered MRIs. And with an MRI, they could scare the living daylights out of you and show you some abnormality on your spine that they told you if you don't do something about that, you could be in a wheelchair. There's no way to be able to get rid of that. It was a very difficult component. During this time of helping so many people, we love to be able to change lives and help people. My daughter had a stroke. We didn't know at the time that a baby could even have a stroke. It was obviously something very difficult for my wife and I. It was our 3rd child. We like to think we're healthy. And we ran into this difficulty with our daughter. We went to the pediatrician. The pediatrician said, this is neurology, you have to go to a pediatric neurologist. There wasn't one in town. It took us 4 or 5 weeks to find one in Denver. The doctor said, your daughter has suffered a stroke. She will never walk or talk because those centers of her brain have been damaged pretty significantly, and good luck. For us, that was hugely concerning. We said, well, what can we do about it? Is this doctor a good one? We went online and we couldn't tell if this doctor was any better than anybody else. Was she on the cutting edge? Was she way behind? We went to Texas Children's, one of the leading Texas hospitals or one of the national children's hospitals. We thought, and it was a 4-month waiting list to see a pediatric neurologist. we finally saw the pediatric neurologist who told us, I don't work with stroke. Said, let's get this right. We filled out reams of paperwork. When we called, we told you what it was for. Did nobody ever look or write a note down ever here and actually connect this information? No. That was not something. They said, not to worry, there's another doctor who does deal with stroke. They happen to have a 3-month waiting list. This is all while our daughter is paralyzed down the right-hand side of her body at a developmental time. So we said there's a much bigger need here, and we decided that we would start a second opinion business that would allow people to have virtual access to a top doctor via video. And the company is called SecondMD. And today it serves, if you're an oil rigger at Chevron or an accountant at Ernst & Young, or you're a truck driver for waste management, or one of 10 million other people in America, you are now covered by SecondMD. And within 3 days, you can be speaking to one of the top doctors for your subspecialty issue in the country. It's only for subspecialties mostly. Even if you have Ebola, we have an Ebola specialist. But the problem we ran into when we started this business was a huge data issue, because we said, we will get you the doctor, you have to get your records. I don't know anything about getting medical records, so I want to start that business. So you get your records, we'll get the doctor, we'll build the tech platform, we'll even build the capacity for you to upload MRIs, and however you get those files, you can do it. Well, we could get a doctor for people. We could get a top specialist from Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, Hopkins, available for you in 2 days. And the person was telling us that they've told me it's going to be 60 to 90 days before they'll release my records to me. We'd say, that's crazy. You might not even be alive in 60 to 90 days. What use are your records going to be in that area? One day, out of sheer desperation, we started calling up these places with patient consent to say, here is consent for the patient. We need these records today. And they said, what are you talking about? That's not how it works. Fill in a form. It depended. We found out it depended on the mood of the office staff in the clinic. If we spoke really nicely and we offered an iTunes gift card, we could get records in 12 hours. If we threatened to take you to court or do something, they weren't really that worried. They'd say, well, fill this in and we've got, in some states, laws of 30 to 60 to 90 days for them to be able to hand over your records to you. So we realized we were wrestling a very dark and difficult issue, and we didn't understand where the incentives were. We've since learned that it is in a health system's non-interest to be able to share that information. There's no benefit to them. And as we found out about health information exchanges, we were so excited about that. We started to meet with them and said, we're going to be able to get our patients' data out. We can upload it afterwards and, be an active contributor to these exchanges. And the hospitals told us, oh, we love health information exchanges for information that we can suck out of it. But we have no interest or intent of ever putting any data into that health IE. So good luck, and it'll take a court mandate for us to share anything with a health information exchange. So it was another difficult type of learning. Today, we retrieve about 3,500 records per month for people. Often records are split across, on average, 4.1 hospitals. Sometimes we're retrieving 100,000 pages, and hospitals are still telling us you're going to have to pay per page. Can you imagine paying per page for thousands? Then they say, well, we have got digital ways that you can get it now, but your MRI is not in that digital. There's a short note from a doctor, there's a date of something. Your MRIs, and often your most important data, is not easily accessible to you, and it's spread across so many of these places. So we are hugely motivated to support any initiative, any project that will help our 10 million people be able to access their own data at a timely and meaningful way to do it. We've got our process down to about a day and a half, but it's still hugely expensive because it relies on so many manual tools, FedEx, and a lot of iTunes gift cards. Believe it or not, that's the best method there is. More recently, we launched a service called Medici. Medici is the ability to have a doctor be able to manage their patients. You heard about telemedicine regulations, billing methods. We have got an incredible platform that allows doctors to invite their patients. They can be paid to text, video, call with their patients. Doctors, instead of being having to go through portals that are often very difficult and clunky, not being reimbursed for a lot of their knowledge, we found a way for doctors to be able to manage and be reimbursed. That is unleashing a lot of new business models, and we're very excited about what that means. For a patient, it's the ability for you to communicate with your doctor, your veterinarian, your cardiologist, your ophthalmologist, your podiatrist, all in one simple place that is compliant. You own that information. We don't have any right to do anything with that information that doesn't have your express intent and interest behind it. So as an entrepreneur in the trenches, every day I just am honored to be here with people who are trying to figure out ways to make this easier for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Clint. May I ask one personal question? How is your daughter today?
I most appreciate you asking. Gabby is now, I cry almost every time. She's walking, she's talking, she's in regular school, and most people don't know there's anything. She just can't use her right hand, but she's a beautiful, functional little miracle. Thank you for asking.
Great. Thank you. Julian.
Well, it's not often I'm on a stage with another rugby player. So, I retired last year after 41 years of rugby, and I'm still standing. So that can't be too bad, as they say. You couldn't have teed up what I'm going to just very briefly talk about any better, in fact, because you're talking about getting hold of your medical records and then being able to reuse them. And that's exactly what we're doing at DigiMe, but we're not just doing it for your medical records. We're doing it for finance and social and wearables and genomic and position and telephone. The bottom line is that what we actually need to do is to do more with our personal data, not less. In fact, our data's hardly used. You've just proven the point. The data's stuck in silos, right? And those companies that are using it aren't using it very well. So we want you to do more with data. But if you're going to do more with data, then privacy is a prerequisite. Of course it is, right? And there's only one person you can trust with all your data. So you've been worrying about your health data. Imagine a library, a single library of every social thing you've done, all your medical, every place you've been every minute of the day, every financial. You're not going to trust that with anybody except one person, are you? Yourself. And so what we came to the realization was that you actually had to own it. And by you, I mean you. I don't mean DigiMe on your behalf. So no Microsoft Health Vault called a DigiMe Health Vault or somebody else holding the records. You holding your own records. And in fact, that's what we've done. So you use our software. I'm going to give you a quick vision of it. It's real. It's not some pretend stuff. You download our software. It goes and gets your data, puts it into a library of your choice, all encrypted and everything else, and then you can share it with your company, with anybody. And, of course, the data doesn't always need to leave your phone. A lot of the data can be done on your phone, so sharing isn't really sharing, right? So there's a health insurance company we're working with that is going to put an app on your phone to help you stay healthy and give you advice and everything else, and not one scrap of information will leave your phone. Right? 100% private. So you think this is all la-la land and isn't possible. Well, I've just come from Iceland, literally yesterday, the last 3 days. We've just launched Living Lab in Iceland. So Iceland have got the first patient-facing API in the world. We've implemented it. In fact, I actually paid for it, to be perfectly truthful. Right? So now every single citizen in Iceland can get all their health data and all their bank data and lots of other data. And innovators are now building on top of that. All right, we're doing it in Finland, we're doing it in the UK, we're doing it in some other places in Europe, and in fact, we're doing it here in the States as well with big pharma companies supporting us. You will, in 2 months' time, be able to get all of. I know you've currently got to download a file, but your direct or your blue button files, you can bring in, you can get your data and start to do it. And we're going to be working with hospitals, and if any hospital wants to do it here, to make sure that patients can really own their data, and that will then solve your problem because they can give it directly to you and other people. So have a look at the video. It's not concentrating on medical data because it's really about all of your data, but you'll see in there real Icelandic data, and this is real software, and you'll see towards the end it's a pretty simple demo app which asks for your social data, and then they do some calculation, but it shows that it is all working and all real. It's only a minute and a half, so fire and away. No, there's no sound, so, okay. So you're choosing where to put it, you're encrypting it, you choose your various sources, they will all then be brought down direct, and they're all showed in one way, which is these tiles, which you can do lots of things with. Now, of course, data has to be usable by you first, so you can search. So here he's searching for a particular date. It's quite a fun date, actually, because he had an accident and prescriptions and Ubers. So you can see the whole train of stuff. Searching for money or searching for maybe your tetanus injection or something, I think, comes up next. Oh, this is a quick search on iTunes. I don't remember it myself. These are all real. It's all happening. By keyword. Oh, yes, he's typing in tetanus. There you go. So what tetanus injections have I had? They're real Icelandic tetanus injections. So you can basically do an awful lot of stuff yourself, but then others can ask you for the data. So here's a third-party app, wants to give you some analytics. So it's going to ask you, and up pops a certificate in our app, and you can actually press a button on that certificate and see the actual data that's going to be transmitted. It's now gone across to this app on your phone, so it hasn't left your own stuff, and they've given you some analytics based upon it. And the point is that is all working today. US health data will be, you don't want the next thing, I'll cancel that. US health data will be in a couple of months, so it can change. No, I'm doing the same thing again.
Himself.
There you go. Stop that nonsense.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Julian. Doc, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. I played exactly one game of rugby in my life, and that was enough.
Rugby players.
That qualifies me. Yeah, all my sports injuries are from basketball, which you can tell I play because I'm so tall. So an interesting thing about privacy, we've had 10,000 years or 100,000 years to work this out in the natural world. And we did it with clothing and shelter first. We are all wearing privacy technology. I mean, that's like the first privacy technology is they put on a bear skin or something, right? And like when we invented modesty and we invented society, we invented privacy technologies to give us degrees of concealment and disclosure and ways of doing that and customs to go along with that and norms to go along with that. And then we went and invented this other world, the internet, which took its current form only 21 years ago. And that was when something called the NSF net, which is one of the backbones within the internet as it was constructed at that time, that it was the only one that forbade commercial activity. And because the way the internet protocol works, data can travel over any number of different paths. So there was a risk that it might travel over this one path that forbade commercial activity. And so there wasn't much until April 30th of 1995. So when that happened, the floodgates opened. We not only had eBay and Amazon and e-commerce, we also had ISPs, we had graphical browsers. We made a practical decision to base almost everything on something called client-server, which is called client-server. I was told it may be apocryphal, but it plays out because slave-master didn't sound so good. But it put us all at the mercy of the servers of the world, which is now metastasized into gigantic silos, which in Europe are known as GAFA for Google, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook. I'm not kidding. GAFA is in the vernacular in Europe, and you can put a T in there and call it GAFTA because you might want to have Twitter in there. And you might notice, by the way, if you're in the US, you're getting privacy notices now from Twitter saying, we have a new privacy policy, click here and do this and that. Please go to the EFF and look for their instructions on that. You only see that in the US, and it's all about defaulting to spying on you, because that's normative in the US, it's not normative in Europe. So an important thing about, part of what I'm saying here is that we've only had 21 years to begin to work this out, okay? And even though the internet is this miraculous thing that we're all taking very much for granted, that doesn't mean we've even barely begun to understand it and or to develop the real norms that we need in order to do society on it. And it has invented conditions in the world that are very hard for us in our human experience to get our heads around. So, for example, what the Internet Protocol says is, and that's what the Internet is, it's all based on a protocol, which is manners among computers. It says any two parties can connect and pass data between themselves without the intermediaries taking any interest in how that happens, and you can have any number of intermediaries, and oh, by the way, we're going to try to reduce to zero the functional distance between any 2 points on this thing, which gives us a sense of almost having no gravity. It's like the Earth went away. This is Joyce's metaphor, by the way. My wife is sitting right over here. So a lot of what I'm known for really comes from her, and it's true. Yeah, but the interesting thing too is another metaphor for that is that if we're all zero distance apart, if you imagine a giant three-dimensional hollow sphere, a giant zero, that's what we occupy. It's the second world where we are all zero distance apart. And this does two things. One is it allows us to work out all kinds of problems and pursue all kinds of opportunities while being zero distance apart from each other, but it also allows homophily, which is a tendency to group with others of our kind or our opinion with incredible, unbelievable, very difficult ease. And that's what's in many ways caused a lot of the political problems we have. We've all gone into these corners where we find people who agree with us and we amplify our disagreements. And we're barely beginning to work that stuff out. So I'm sort of urging us to give ourselves a break a little bit while we try and figure out how to live and terraform this second world that lives alongside the one we're in. So I brought this along because I travel a lot, and of course I have things on hangers that says, we love our customers. Anybody who goes to a cleaners in the U.S. has gotten one of these, right? And is there a more insincere thing that anybody can hand out, right? But the interesting thing about it is some company manufactures these and they get scale, right? And scale is this great virtue that big companies want. They want to have scale across many customers. And we have invented so many systems that allow a company to have scale, to normalize their relationships across many different customers. And every time that we click agree and log in and create a new login and a new face word, I was going to call it, a new password, we've created yet another relationship with a company who's gotten scale across many of us while having no scale ourselves, and in fact yielding some, because now we've added one more inconvenience. We're not multiplying our inconveniences, but we're adding them up. All of us have up to hundreds of different relationships with companies, and we ought to have that scale. How do we get our scale here? So this is one of the reasons that I created a project called Project VRM at the Berkman Center at Harvard in 2006, the purpose of which was to encourage the development of tools and services that give all of us both independence but better ways to engage. And it's basically an evangelical project. I run nothing. It has no funding. It's a wiki and it's a list and it's a blog. And there are a lot of companies in this. One of them is DigiMe, and there are probably some others in the room as well. And I do consult them. I need to disclose that as well. But the important thing there is there are companies that are working on ways to give us scale. So for example, with DigiMe or with other tools like it, you should be able to, when you change your address or your last name, or you add some new healthcare data to your profile, whatever it is, you can notify everybody at once rather and save yourself labor in the course of that. And the way I see this, by the way, is that if you notice that if you look around the room, you'll notice that we all look different, and this is by design. This is part of being human beings. We look different so we can tell each other apart, and we sound different so we can tell each other apart and we can get to know each other as inherently different and unique and sovereign human beings. And this is a feature, a fundamental feature of being a human being, which is another reason why all these normative systems that want to classify us are an offense in some ways to what makes us unique and different and important in the world. So one of the tools we need in the course of interacting with the world is the ability to let others know what's okay and what's not okay. That's, again, one reason why we wear the clothes. So one of the projects we're working on through a spin-off we have called Customer Commons are terms that we can assert. And I have to say, I'm sitting here for 2 days to realize how little I know about how this already exists within the healthcare space. But we're not working on, specifically, I'm not working on the healthcare space in this case. Working with publishing, or we're looking with retailing. So with publishing, for example, we're working with the Cyber Law Clinic at Harvard, which is our counsel for Customer Commons, on a term called no stalking. And what no stalking says is, to publishers, just show me ads not based on tracking me. And if publishers agree to that, and this can be done automatically through your browser, has a browser header that says this, and it points toward terms that you have at Customer Commons, works very much like Creative Commons, which also came out of the Berkman Center. It's a good deal for the other side. All contracts ought to be good deals for both sides. There's another one called, it's for intent casting. And intent casting is, I need a stroller for twins on the mall in the next 2 hours who's coming through, without revealing more than needs to be revealed. And those terms as well will live at Customer Commons. So I just want to give you a couple examples of some stuff that we're actually working on. So probably used up enough of my time, and take Q&A. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. Are there any questions at the moment, or should I start? If I start, I have a very basic one to you, Julian, at the very beginning, which is, if I understood that concept correctly, the data is stored on the phone, or where is the data?
You choose where the data is. So it can't be stored on the phone per se, because then you can't access it through multiple devices. Yeah. So the individual has their own cloud infrastructure, and you can choose. So we allow you to choose any of the big ones like Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever, or you can choose a NAS drive at home. So depending upon your own level of paranoia, you can do it. But what we do make sure is that everything is individually doubly encrypted, military grade, with your own keys that we know nothing about. So you own it, but don't think that just because you own data, you can have your own cloud services as well. Okay. That are yours.
And are there any cases you are aware of that a person using the device was asked by an official to open the phone and to make the data accessible?
That's out with our control, of course. That's and we. Officially, we do, by the way, as DigiMe, take no position on government oversight. Because we don't see, touch, nor hold the data, then that's the best we can do. Whatever you do within your particular nation's legal framework is your particular nation's legal framework, whether they're allowed to come through your front door or come into your phone. We can't stop that. What we can do is make sure that it's only through a legal framework that they can get the data.
Okay. As you certainly know, there is a European concept in the General Data Protection Regulation called data transferability, and the right to transfer data from one location to another one, and that is explicitly given to the data subject. Data portability is the term, Article 17. Do you think that this is useful? I mean, having this somewhere enshrined in a law, does that help you in developing the business?
It's tremendously useful. We developed the business way before that came in. But obviously, if you're going to have a library of all your data, you have to be able to access it easily, and hopefully that makes our life easier as your librarian, in creating the tool. So data portability is very important to make sure of that. Of course, what we're trying to do, a lot of people, is get that upgraded so it's data portability with an API. Because just like the hospitals you heard here can try and say, oh, well, I've got 60 or 90 days, people can try and limit your ability to get your data. I'm a strong believer, however, that as people see the benefit of having their data themselves And businesses see the benefit of coming to you for data, and it's a huge benefit from a business coming to you because they get rich data. It's wider, deeper, 100% accurate, normalized, meets all the data protection acts. They can do more, and that's the real key, that actually businesses will strive to give you your data back because it's better for them. And that includes hospitals and GPs and stuff. So just a quick thing, I mean, you've all got on your seat here what happens, and there's benefits across the whole chain from the individual having their data, and that's what I think will drive it. But having it in law is brilliant. Yes.
Okay. Adrian, there is a microphone over there.
Two people on the panel. Two people on the panel that represent two sides of this getting data out of the hospital. What can you teach each other, or what do we have to teach each other given the two separate experiences from this perspective? What do we have to teach each other about regulations like GDPR or something else, or HIPAA, or commercial practice, or the value chain that needs to evolve? It's an open question. I'm curious for that interchange.
As I think we're the first part in it, and then he's the second part in it. So the individual, if they have their data, it's there and available. They can do whatever they like. Nobody says they can't give all of their data to a researcher or do whatever, or keep it all private, right? So it's their call. So the simple answer is, we all have a right to data, and that's even enshrined in Meaningful Use 2 and 3 and all the things over here. So you then get the data. What we then provide is a certificate system for anybody to ask for that data. So what I would see happening is when you want the data of your clients, you would say, hey, if you've got your data in DigiMe or other equivalents, there will be others in time, can I just have it? Right? And then the data would flow from the individual to you with your own privacy rules. And by the way, he pays all of 10 cents for a postal fee. That's it. Right? So nothing more than that. And that's the way it should work. And the individual can either agree to give it or not. And you get that data.
Yes, I think that part of it makes sense. The initial part is a little more difficult in how we get hospitals, how we get Epic and Cerner to actually our doctor from the HHS today, one of the parts that I really disagreed with was he said that's an IP issue. It really isn't an IP issue. I can make 37 fields available through an API and share zero of my IP in that. So how do we get these hospitals, how do we get these EHRs to really have to agree that they're going to make this data available? There's students here that in a weekend could actually help them navigate how to actually make that data accessible, yet still be secure, still be around that individual. So I think we both rely on health systems and EHRs bringing down some of these walls, and it may take some very strong policy to have to make that happen. I don't know if there's a way that patients are going to be angry enough and loud enough to really be able to demand that this happens. So,
in a way, I would really. The question was whether Europe is ahead of this in this. My answer. So the first thing I would like to do is I would strongly endorse Clint's point of view that this is not an IP issue, and this is very different. And I think in a way Europe. I don't know enough about the US situation to judge that, but at least I can say that Europe is constantly thinking about this, and that there are huge initiatives also from a regulatory standpoint trying to make data more freely accessible. And the headline probably used for this is open access for medical care and research. And Europe is very well aware of this. And again, the typical European approach is rather regulatory again. So the whole data portability concept is in a way a regulatory approach. It's not really market driven. It's the legislator going ahead and then hopefully the market following, which is, as far as I understand, different from here, where it's the market developing and then hoping that patients will be angry enough to help themselves. Perhaps, Clint, you would like to comment on this. Do you have any experience in trying to export the idea into Europe or any other area of the world? And are there any differences there that are important to your business when it comes to organizing access to patients' data?
We've done cases in about 44 countries, so there's a lot of learning around each of those. You do a case to try and retrieve records in China. It's got its own sets of complexities around that. We have found nowhere more difficult than the US.
Okay.
From our experience, sometimes we have to just learn the cultural mechanism in other countries, but in the US there is definitely a very high wall that's being defended very carefully to not be able to hand that information over. In Europe, in your home of Austria, I went last summer with a friend to the doctor, and he gave his card, and the doctor from his card could see previous visits, could have information from a single card like that. Right now, it's easier for a doctor at another hospital to just order you more tests and more MRIs than it is for them to actually just get that information you just had done 3 weeks ago across.
But you're right, in the Europe it's regulation first, but it kind of isn't, because a lot of stuff's been happening absent of the regulation. And it's a question of showing the benefit to all parties. So in the hospital system, in the NHS in the UK, for example, the fact that actually a lot of people are paid, as the chap this morning talked about, per head, right, rather than per visit, means that anything that makes it more efficient, which is taking your data, will naturally be supported. But here so it is definitely, out of all the places we work, this is definitely the hardest. But I think actually we have a method of breaking that stranglehold. And the method of breaking the stranglehold, and I'm a bit of a broken record on this, is the fact that there are lots of legitimate and pseudo-legitimate, and possibly plain wrong, arguments when one company is talking about transferring the data to another company. And they make it all seem terribly complex, and they can hide behind lies, damn lies, statistics, and all the rest of it. And the comment this morning was clearly plain wrong, right? And as someone who's done interoperability for the military for 20 years, I know that for absolute fact. But when you ask and say, I want the data back as an individual, they can't deny that, right? And that breaks the cycle, because the data goes back to the individual who own their copy, as I learned just before lunchtime. So we'll use that phrase. They own their copy. Then they can do what the hell they like with it. So you break the cycle. So if it's company A having to argue whether they're going to give the data to company B, C, D, E, F, and G, they'll play the games all day long. But company A gives the data back to the individual. Company B gives the data back to the individual. Company C does. The individual now can give it to whom they like. And that's the change. And the important change is it's to the individual, not to a company acting on behalf of the individual, like Google Health or Microsoft Health Vault. And I think that's what will open it up. And you will see it happening this year and into next year. This conference next year, you'll have seen the big change, and I guarantee it. And you can hold me to it. I'll buy everybody a drink if that's not the case by next year. All right.
All right. Is this working? Okay. Yeah. So first of all, for anyone who doesn't agree with them regarding the interoperability IP stuff, IBM Loopback makes it super easy to make an API these days. So, okay, sorry. Take that out. Okay, that works better. So yeah, agreeing with all of them regarding the note on IP, because IBM, I don't work for IBM, but IBM Loopback makes it super easy to create an API these days. So yeah, the person this morning was just wrong. But I did have a question for Digimit. You said at the end of your pitch that within a couple months you'd have U.S. health data. Was that pitch talk, or what did you mean by being able to get all of the U.S. health data that the rest of us are sorting out how to get together, and you're just going to have it in a few months?
Have it in a few months. No, it's not pitch talk. It's real, because we're actually working on it right now. But it is only the files that you're allowed to download, right? Just to make that clear. So you're allowed to download through the portals that the various places give you a file. Now, you can't do much with it, especially if it's in direct format. You can't understand that. We're taking that data and also the blue button format, which, by the way, there's 2 different formats and no one meets the spec, and we know all of that. And we're even doing the work of normalizing it. So we're doing that interoperability piece, right? And the reason we can do that is because I did it for the military for years, right? You will have that ability within a couple of months. Now, when I say a couple of months, that will be to a group of people who are going to test it and make sure that there's no errors, and then it will go to the public sometime late Q3, early Q4. But no, it's not pitch talk. It's real. I can actually show you Icelandic data. It's the same interface as everything else. So all we actually have to do, I know it sounds old, it's not much, is we just have to map the data from one file into our existing format, and then the rest of the software all works. So it's not
Very
pitch
cool.
talk.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Nancy Anthracite. Besides being a privacy zealot, I am the president of an organization that's all volunteer run that has a enterprise level electronic medical record system built on the Department of Veterans Affairs that you can download and install. I have a lot of concerns about, we keep talking about accessing the data. I'm concerned that the government is pushing having an API directly into your medical record system. I don't feel there's anything there's such a thing as an unhackable system unless it's not connected to anything and you've got a vault around it. And I don't think we should be doing that. I think we should upload the data of the patients that are willing to take that risk into some place where they can get it. But I don't think this idea of putting an API directly in is a good idea. I just, we talk about patients getting in the records and stuff. I would like to see them say, go to the person who's got the records, put it here, send it out, whatever, but don't insist that you have an API directly into my medical record system.
There may be an easy solution around that by you might be given access to a portal, but you don't have to create an account at most EHR portals. So
Right, and I think that's a problem. That means all the data of everybody, including the people that are not willing to take that risk, are on that portal. I think the data shouldn't go to that portal until the patient says, I'm willing to take that risk. I think you should opt in, not opt out.
Well, an API is actually much more secure than a portal. And you can...
I'm not born yesterday.
No, neither am I. And look, I spent 20 years doing this on military systems, and I can assure you they gave a damn, right? Because lives matter there as it does in health. Everything can be hacked, right? And even your token can be taken off and all the rest of it. But if it's good enough for your bank data and everything else with two-factor ID and various other things, then it will be good enough for your medical data. Because at the end of the day, if I want your medical data, I can go to your doctor, receptionist, and give them $1,000 and get it anyway, all right? So the question is, can you do a bulk hacking? And you can't, because the APIs build in protection systems for multiple attacks and stuff like that. So, look, nothing's 100% foolproof, but it's as foolproof as you need it to be, seriously, with APIs.
And if I could just help put it to rest, the opportunity for a hacker to go through your portal and potentially get your information is of very little appeal than going through a hospital and getting hundreds of thousands of records.
Absolutely.
So the real risk is the big hacks have not been through a portal. The big hacks that we've seen have actually been at a system. So whether your portal's
The
available
portals you're talking about, though, are to hospitals. These are private practices and hospitals that are required by the government to put up a portal and required to have access to these portals in such a way that usually the practices will will expose all their data by dumping it onto this portal. And then what happens when it gets hacked? The physician is open to being sued and will be on the wall of shame of HHS.
Okay, but hold on, right?
Yeah.
There's different implementations, right? So first of all, by the way, I will agree, an API is more secure than a portal as it happens, right? Because it's easier to see the attack vector. But if people are implementing portals wrongly, that's a separate issue, right? So a portal, nobody should be able to access data from a portal without the relevant authentication. So now I certainly wouldn't want to argue with you, because I don't know every single health portal in the US, that people have implemented it badly, because they may well have done. But that's a separate issue. It is, but what you shouldn't be doing is arguing against portals and APIs from a basic security point of view. They can be enormously secure and can be dealt with properly. If people implement them badly, well, hey, just like hospital systems, you can hack them.
I need to pile in here. I need to speak about this because this is a very large fraction of what patient privacy rights is involved in, is the design of secure and privacy-preserving APIs. It's 90% of my work. And it also is work that I do with DigiMe. I should disclose that as well. And what I can, I think I have to speak very strongly on this to this point, just like the two people on stage. The work that we're involved in is being sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security and is designed, and I've been approached, and actually more than approached, I've been working with MITRE Corporation, which is a very large nonprofit government advisor. The APIs are inevitable, and they are more secure. And what is important for us to realize is that the friction that Nancy is asking about is something that we can expect of our APIs. In other words, we want to make it harder to automatically get 1,000 or 100,000 patients' data from a particular honeypot, and we want to make it harder to do that without there being disclosure or transparency to the 100,000 people that just got hacked. Those capabilities can be designed and are being designed by the military and the government experts that are doing this, and it's very important work, and it's certainly a very large part of what PPR is doing.
Right.
I just wanted to quickly add that I don't think it's totally out of left field, this concept of maybe you should just let patients opt in to being in these databases.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And, hi, my name is Joanne Luciano. I'm at Indiana University now teaching data science for drug discovery, health, and translational medicine. I just have a few follow-up comments, sharing some information, so some from this session and some from previous. So when the comment came up about confusing parts of HIPAA, I wanted to just relate a very small anecdote about confusion with HIPAA. So, for example, my mother for a while was living in a retirement community that was owned privately and then was bought by Hebrew Rehab, which was very good at administering things. And HIPAA came into practice, and they've changed the policy so that none of the people, none of the neighbors, none of the friends and neighbors that lived in the same house, in the same building as my mother, could know anything about any of them that were taken to a hospital. It was a complete shutdown of information, so they couldn't visit, they couldn't send a card, they didn't know what happened, the person just disappeared, and they couldn't release any information. So I think that's one of the challenges of the privacy protection. Another comment is in a different way of getting my own data. And I think it's 5 states currently, I cannot order blood labs for myself without getting a written prescription from a doctor. So I can't even get my data. Not even, I could get the lab reports once somebody else issues the prescription, the doctor's orders. Another comment I had is that I don't know, maybe everybody here does know, maybe some don't, but I have been in the practice of every time I or someone I go with goes to a physician office, a hospital, or anything, asking for my medical record, not just the doctor's summary. And it's gotten much easier. It used to be a bit of an effort to actually get an imaging CD, but now it's pretty routine. I just ask for it, and they just hand it over. Getting the actual notes as opposed to the summary is a little bit harder. I have to be a little bit more forceful in requesting that, but you can absolutely ask for and request your data. The biggest barrier is they'll tell you to go to medical records. and it will cost you something. But most of the time, they just give it to me after I just stand there and persist for a while. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Julian, may I ask a very stupid question probably, which is, where's the money? So how do you earn the money? What is the business case behind that?
Okay, so no, it's very important because we know nothing, we don't hold the data, so we can't sell data, we can't do anything. We do only two things. We're a librarian. Our software is a librarian for the individual, and our software is a postman. So when a third-party company asks you for data, either for processing on your device or off your device, we charge a 10-cent stamp. And that's it. Now, that doesn't sound much, and in fact, we deliberately aim to make less than 0.5% of the total economic value, but actually we have no costs because we don't see, touch, or hold your data. We're just a software provider in that sense. So actually, it scales very quickly and will be quite nicely profitable, but we're not going to worry about the billions that people make off your data, and that goes back to you. So actually, with a change in who owns the data, you get a complete change in the economic model as well.
Okay.
Does that mean I'm going to get 10,000 requests a day?
No, he said, does that mean I'm going to get 10,000 requests a day? No, because we're not selling you either. You have to go to a website or download an app that asks you for data. So if you don't do those actions, then no one's going to know you exist with your data, right?
One tiny question for you, Julian. Do you permit, will patients be able to allow their data to be queried instead of sent for research as opposed to sending everything out to someone else who will sell it again?
Yeah, I don't want to go too much into this, otherwise it would just be just what we do. But yes, no, a consent access certificate has to say what data they'd like, what they're going to do with it, what they're going to give you back. Are they going to take the data off your device and keep it? Are they going to share it with anybody? And are they going to implement right to forget? So there's a lot of things that they say. But the first piece, what data do they want? They can say very granularly. So they can say, I'd like this health data from this time period that meets this search criteria. And obviously our recommendation to people is only ask for the data you really, really need, because more people will say yes. You get a higher things. And of course, you can then process it on device as well, which is the key thing. So it's really up to the value propositions all between the requester and the individual. We're just a postman.
I have a very fundamental question to Doc, if I may. The question, I mean, you are completely right that it took us about, 100,000 or 1 million years in order to come up with privacy rules as they look like at the moment. And still they are very, very diverse and different and very complex everywhere. And it's now only 21 years that the internet is in a shape that is similar to the one that we have at the moment. So the question now is, is human mankind quick enough in adapting, or are we going to hit a wall here, which will be the complete privacy meltdown because nobody understood quickly enough what's happening?
Well, I think we're having the meltdown right now anyway. I think the meltdown is, in fact, it's huge. I think the answer is both. I mean, I think we're having the meltdown. I don't think we know even the degree to which the meltdown is happening. I mean, it's in the U.S. the state of healthcare in the U.S. is so beyond FUBAR that I've been sitting here thinking, how do you describe this? Because when one of us was talking earlier, all of us have horror stories. My mother died of a medical accident. I'm at risk now of pancreatitis because of a medical accident. It all had to do with data. It all had to do with systems that didn't get along with each other. This one from Epic, the other one from somebody else. Or as Glenn was saying, one Epic doesn't talk to the one across the street, right? And this is, I mean, that alone, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people die every year, perhaps even in the U.S. alone, because of medical errors that can probably be traced back to one of the best books ever written, also the funniest, is the Onion's Atlas of the World, which has descriptions of, it looks like a real atlas, except it says free globe inside and, now with 30% more Asia. And it has a little cut line for every country, like for France, it's one one nation over God, and for Israel is the broken promised land. Well, the U.S. is the land of opportunism. Okay, so and that's it. I mean, it really comes down to opportunism. And on the one hand, we need like maximum respect for the free market system because it gives us enormous benefits. And on the other hand, we need to recognize that an unfettered and absolute freedom of everything has its downsides, especially when it's a gigantic shell game where you hide the risks almost completely, which is what we have. I mean, it's all arguments about healthcare. Ignore, for example, that the patient is not the customer. The insurance company is the customer. It's a B2B business, right? So, and nobody even wants to start there, okay? And so, I mean, it's interesting to me that when I started Project VRM, I kind of thought, okay, I don't want to touch healthcare because I'd love to see progress in my lifetime, and I'm not young, right? So, but then Adrian comes along and like day 2 and says, I'm taking this one on, right? So he's been a stalwart in this thing from the start. And then companies like Digime and others that are creating the places where we can store our data really matter. But I think, I really do think our gears are being stripped as human beings right now by the fact that the internet is in our midst. And we really don't, I love studying Marshall McLuhan because he says that the laws of media say that every new medium has 4 effects that you don't necessarily notice right away, right? And you enhance one thing, you retrieve another, you obsolete another, and then it reverses into something else. And so I'll just tell a brief story. So I'm a journalist, right? And I'm a blogger. I'm an early blogger, like from 1999, right? And in 2003, I was like one of the 16 top bloggers. They have 20, 30,000 people reading me every day. And the sense that I've got my publishing thing on the net. The great promise of the web is that we can all be publishers, right? And then starting 2006, 2007, it blew up and went away. And right now we're watching all of journalism do the same. There is no center that holds anymore. It is gone. Okay, nobody on the right, or especially the far right, trusts any newspaper anymore. Okay, it's gone. You can be the New York Times. You can be the most reputable journalist in the world, and because you're a journalist, you're discounted. Okay, you're part of the mainstream media. We don't believe them anymore. Well, we're part of our own echo chamber. It's part of what Joyce calls an ecosystem. We have an ecosystem now, and we're all sort of inside our own little echo places. But what happened there? So what happened with social media? Well, what did social media do? Well, in McLuhan's terms, it enhanced social relations. All of a sudden, you're talking to high school friends that you haven't talked to in years and probably wouldn't otherwise, right? And now they're your friends. You have thousands of friends that far exceed your Dunbar number. And, that's the first thing. But what did it retrieve? It retrieved gossip. And if you've read Yuval Noah Harari's book *Sapiens*, he talks about how gossip is one of the most important factors for human beings. It's probably what accounts for language and many other things. We live for gossip in many ways. It obsoleted journalism. It just didn't just obsolete blogging. It obsoleted journalism. Suddenly, we have the backyard fence, which is Facebook, that's worldwide. And even Facebook doesn't know what's going on. Has no idea. Okay? And it reversed into a weird kind of new tribalism. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. And he calls these formative things, causes. Aristotle talked about there are 4 causes. There's efficient cause. I drop this and I know it's going to hit the ground. I'm causing that to hit the ground. It's a material cause. This has weight and it falls. And there's a final cause. There's my purpose is that I want to do this. But there's a formal cause, which is that gravity, I suppose. It's the ground that we don't see when we're looking at the figure. Right. And almost everything we debate is figure, and there's a ground. And the ground is the internet. And the ground is digital life. And we have no idea what this is yet. But it's there in our midst, and we're just trying to deal with it. And so, and the U.S. is just a weird special case because we're the land of opportunism, right? So that's a long-winded answer, but, And I just love, by the way, I love the GDPR, and I love that Europe has a strong sense of privacy, and that And I love what the GDPR is doing that's calling all kinds of businesses like Digime, that was already invented before that. But I mean, so much more business is happening around privacy in Europe than is in the US, and it's wonderful.
Can I just make one comment on GDPR? Because it was said in this morning's keynotes, and it said, well, the GDPR may be stifling innovation, but it's worth it. GDPR is not stifling innovation. No. It is accelerating innovation, and it is forcing companies to think, okay, and therefore they will do more, as I've said before, with data, and there is an enormous interest, and you're going to see a huge economic advantage come out of GDPR. And I know that because I'm working with those companies. So whenever you hear somebody tell you GDPR or privacy regulation stifles innovation, you can point them in my direction and I'll give them 101 reasons why that's complete rubbish.
Just a quick observation. The last 12 years I've kind of bounced between Capitol Hill and Huntington, West Virginia, actually, working in primary care.
Right. Get real close to the mic. It's
sorry, is that better? A little louder there?
You got to just get right on it.
Just right on it.
There you go.
Or hold it. I'll hold it. That might be a little easier. Okay. I was working in the U.S. Senate for 7 years, and then went over to probably one of the most adverse environments in terms of medicine that you can be in primary care in Huntington. I thought the Senate looked bad, and as I was listening to the AI presentation earlier, and I think I commented to one or two of you, try to present to policy leaders that you're going to have a software program that's going to choose between two alternatives, like the car that, do you hit the elderly person or do you hit the small child? You're not even going to be able to have that debate. But what I'm concerned about when we talk about the technology, and I was in software years ago, is get out in the field, get outside of the Beltway, and then tell me that these people are going to be able to use these systems. The systems cannot work like, 10 years in software taught me every few year, 18 months maybe, Microsoft changes their software again. We came back during health reform to our office, and no one could do any work in our office because they changed our whole office package and no one could run any menus. That's college-educated and graduate-educated individuals. Go to Huntington where you got people who didn't finish high school, and they're trying to use the portal. They've got an app on their phone. We're trying to design very simple, scalable things, and you're going to change that a few months later. And then we get to the bottom line when you're actually presenting them the information. Most of the public can't interpret this information. The level of our education isn't there. That's just a cautionary comment. I'm very concerned that we get in a little bit of a bubble here, and can we present something that's going to be usable, that they can access, that they understand, that isn't changing every 6 to 12 months, and it's going to make a difference, like what you were trying to do for your daughter. It's going to make a difference in their health. Most of what I've seen isn't there. When I came to town and transferred my records back, they were immediately merged with a homeless person's. I went into my physician, and I'd been teaching family medicine, and I came in with an injured foot, and because of the way we aligned our incentives, he started running through every preventive medicine measure he could, including a PSA test. I said, we're not doing these anymore for someone in my situation. And I'm taking Proscar, which will block part of the results of that. He goes, oh, we do it all. You're not current. I said, yeah, I think I'm current. I worked on the bill, and I also been teaching medicine. But he was doing this because they pay him for it. And so that's all of us have observed that. Where you spend the money, that's what gets done. But I think we need, Deb, maybe I've been chatting with folks, maybe we need a session on behavioral aspects of these things so that we can kind of bring that part of the science into play, because it's going to be a real challenge beyond those of us who are really highly trained and educated.
Usability is a real key, and I'm sure you've got that with your app. We have. I mean, look, I have a whole section of people who care about, is it easy to understand, and not just the medical data, right? I hope you saw from what I showed you on the video that it was quite easy to use. So, for example, we ban the word manage. Nobody manages their data. I mean, would you manage your data? I wouldn't do it, right? So you just have to choose a location, choose an authenticator channel, and everything else is automatic, all right? And then you have to present it in a nice, easy way. We're on our 5th generation of user interface. For that reason, things change, but then they steady down, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who do that. So I can assure you that that is utmost in our minds, and it has to be in every app. And I'm sure you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think there's some healthcare has been the last industry to really have any type of usability. We built Medici around people can text. Can you text? Yes, I can text. Well, beautiful. We've built a secure environment around how you can be able to start with text. So being able to make it as easy an experience, because Amazon managed to work it out for rural populations, and Netflix managed to, and Airbnb and different places, people understand those. They understand Facebook. So healthcare, I think you will see a wave. We really make sure that we understand these populations, not only for the US, but we're trying to make sure that we'll be in 10 countries by the end of the year with Medici. Doctors have to understand it. Non-technology doctors have to be able to go, yeah, that was easy. I feel smart. So I think there's a lot of exciting healthcare companies, at least, looking at it going, how do we make our doctor feel smart when they use it? How do we make the user, how do we use the words? How do we...
Our docs felt smarter because they carried a scribe around to do all the entry.
Yeah.
That helped them a lot.
We do second opinions for rural Texas, for the retirees of Texas A&M. And we say, you can do a video consult on your phone. They go, what? I don't want to do that. We said, but it would be really great. Well, how about we call you on your home phone? The doctor will call you at 4:00. That would be great. And that's what they appreciate. The idea of just emailing them a easy consent release is not that easy. It's DocuSign for us is effortless. So I think there is good attention going that if you really are going to change the world, build something that is scalable, that can help tens of millions, hundreds of millions, you have to pay attention to that usability.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to, I think the points you make up, I think, brought up are perhaps the most important here. We need inventions that mother necessity. By that I mean you take one look at it and say, I got to have that. I have to use that. Palms and Blackberries and crappy Nokias were around for a long time before Steve Jobs invented one of these. And all of a sudden, we're all on these rectangles, right? And they're changing our lives. We had to have them, right? We need one of those. I hope that Julian's invention is one of those. But one of them will come along, I think. I think because the need is so large. But it's been a long time and there's no way to predict.
Okay. So that is a very good closing remark for the panel, I think, and we are already a little bit late. But all of us stay here around, at least those of us who don't need to get a plane. Deborah, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you to all of you, and